So I just got off the call with my coach, and we were speaking about nutrition. We were speaking about food and intake and whatnot. And I asked him a question in terms of like on Saturdays, am I able to have more food or certain food just because in our religion, there's like a lot of good food that happens over the weekend on a big meal. It's like literally Thanksgiving every single weekend. So the question what really was is like if I'm working out all week, if I'm eating healthy all week, and like there's one meal or two meals that I want to be eating, like can I eat them or should I not? And we were talking about it for a little bit, and I realized after, or really during the conversation, I said to him, I'm like, I don't think I want to have this emotion or feeling towards it, because let's say he said yes. Let's say he said I am able to have one meal or one day off a week, and that day off I can do X, Y, and Z, and I can eat it whatever I want. And I thought it was interesting because on the one hand, like that's awesome that I get that food, but what that also means on the opposite side of the coin is that 6 days a week I'm sort of depriving myself of good food. And I said to them, I don't really want to have the mentality of like, I need a day off. I want this to be my standard. I want my standard to be, I eat healthy. This is what I do. And I realized that so many times for so many of us, we go through different things throughout our lives. And we sort of give ourselves in a little bit in one specific area. But what we're doing is we're saying that everything else we do is wrong, or like that's not ideal. And we're putting so much pressure on the majority of what it is that we're doing. And sometimes I think we need a break and we need to just take like have a chill. But if you're scheduling that into into your day, into your weekend, into your months, whatever it might be, you're setting yourself up for failure for a majority of the amount of the time. And I said, like, whether I have that food or not have that food, that's like a different story. And yes, I want to become prepared and I want to see what is that I can do in order to make sure that I don't fall and stumble in this area. However, I want to also make sure that I'm having the proper mentality the other 6 days of the week. And I think that all goes into mindset. Like, what is our mindset when it comes to the success that we want? And I think for so many people, they don't necessarily view or they don't frame different things in their lives a certain way. And therefore, they only see it one way. And I have a whole bit on different types of mindsets that people like can be working on, different ideas that that different people speak to, but just understanding that there's so many different areas that we can be affecting our lives. So if you feel deprived in one area, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to just get that feeling, that emotion. I need to just smoke pot once a week, or I need to get drunk, only one night a week. Like what you're doing is this: you're telling yourself that I need to be doing those things because the other 6 days or the other 6 nights that I'm hanging out with friends, like I'm not doing it. And it's really important, I think, that we need to understand, like, what is our standard? What are we doing for ourselves? How is it that we can start to move forward and really understand, hey, this is X, Y, and Z that I want to be doing. This is the lifestyle that I want to be living in. And I think it all comes back to mindset. And, Dr. Carol Dweck talks about the idea of the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And I think it's a phenomenal idea. It was honestly the first book I read, Mindset. And I was blown away by the ideas of the book. And what she was pretty much saying is if you want to read the book, that's great. You also cheat with this book. Literally she just pretty much teaches the idea, and then she goes through different areas of your life where this idea applies. So if you want to just go through the ideas that are interesting to you, different areas of your life, feel free to do so. It took me so long to read this book, and I was so stuck. And then only afterwards I realized, like, oh my gosh, it's literally the same idea, just applying it into relationships, into sports, into businesses and whatnot. So make sure you don't have to actually read the whole book. You could just read the basic idea in the beginning and then just see the cool ones that you think you want to apply to your own lives. But what the basic idea of the book was that we all have the ability to understand that we can grow. We have the ability to become more than we want. That we can have that growth mindset to do more than we want. However, on the other hand, we also have to realize that if we don't move forward, if we don't believe that, then we're just setting ourselves up for failure. We're having this fixed mindset that we're not really capable of doing X, Y, and Z. And I think for so many of us, we have to have this ability that if we want to be doing something bigger, if we want to be doing something more, we have to believe that we can grow. Because if we believe we can grow, that's the first part of the battle. Because if you don't believe you can grow, if you have this fixed mindset, then guess what? You're not going to grow. You're not going to be able to get to the place that you want to be getting to. And I think for a lot of us, we can't win because we don't think we can do it. And it's interesting because when it comes to business, or when it comes to certain people who are trying to do certain things in their lives, and they quote unquote tried already. And I'll say quote unquote because I don't think they really tried, but they actually think they won't try. They think they tried, which is enough, right? It doesn't matter whether they actually tried or not. They think they tried. And they put themselves out there and they didn't succeed, right? They ended up doing a podcast and it didn't go viral. Or they made their first, Instagram post and it didn't go viral. And what we have to realize is that if you are setting yourself up for failure by, number one, not setting proper goals, number two is not setting the goals properly, I think those are two different things, then we have to realize that like we're gonna mess up and we're gonna have the wrong expectations. And because we have the wrong expectations, all that happens is that we end up just messing ourselves up in the long run. And what we really have to understand and what we have to try to figure out is how can we set those proper expectations. And the proper expectation also means that I can achieve X, Y, and Z. It might not happen tomorrow, but if a long enough time horizon, is it not reasonable that I can't reach this type of goal? Can I not do X, Y, and Z if I really did it and I put my time in and I focused on it? And I think that's something that we all need to think about. We need to understand for ourselves, what is it that we're doing? How is it that we can start to set ourselves up? I think for so many of us, we also are so held back by this idea of fear of failure. You see, fear of failure is one of those things that stops so many people from taking that action. It's so powerful because you're so scared to do something. You're scared you're going to fail, and therefore you don't do it. But what we have to do is we have to realize, no, like you should do something in order to fail. Imagine if you had that mindset that every time I did something, I did it and I knew I was going to fail. And I was actually excited about the failure because that failure is really just feedback. It's feedback telling me, hey, you know what? Those things that you thought you knew, or maybe you read a book about, so you thought you knew it, you didn't actually know about it. And if we could just have that mind shift, I remember the first time I had that, I was investing in a real estate deal. I was doing the deal and I ended up losing a lot of money, which was awesome. Not actually, it was not awesome. And I remember the first day I got into the day after I got into a call with my coach and I was speaking to him and he saw that I was just like, I was a wreck. And he's like, Bennett, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. He's like, dude, you got to tell me what's happening. I'm like, honestly, I just lost a lot of money in my real estate deal. I don't know. I'm not happy. I'm not thrilled. And he goes to me, he's like, I don't get why you're upset. I'm like, did you not just hear what I said? I lost a lot of money in my real estate deal. And he says back to me, he's like, you're missing the point. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, you're taking that as failure. Other people out there take it as feedback and then they learn from that. So the next time they don't fall into the same thing. And I was like, can you repeat that? He's like, failure is just feedback. I was like, wow, that is incredible. My mind was blown away because who knew that we can go through things and the thing can happen. And yet we can all have a different perception about what that thing is. For certain people, it could be the worst thing in the world. For certain people, it could be the best thing in the world because it just means I'm one step closer to my goal. And that is so powerful. So I think we all have to understand and realize for ourselves, what is it that we want to be doing? How is it that we can get there? And what is it we can start to shift in terms of the fear of failure? How can we start to circumvent that emotional, takeover and allow ourselves to move forward? And I think for so many of us, we have that ability. We're just so scared to do it. And it's really making that shift. It's saying, hey, you know what? This thing might be a little bit scary, but you know what else is scary? Not doing the thing. Like, that's really not scary. Like, imagine that. It's like, I have an opportunity to make millions and millions of dollars doing X, Y, and Z. Now, I have a new business idea. I have a partner that I could go reach out to. I don't know, I could raise money for charity, whatever it might be. And you don't do it because you don't even ask somebody, or you don't take that next step because you're scared it might not work. Like, and first of all, that way is probably not going to work. So we really start to shift and say, okay, this way is not going to work, but what am I supposed to do? I remember when I started one of my coaching programs, I had my whole idea in terms of I was going to do my marketing strategy. And I was going to market with this one newspaper that a couple of thousand people were going to see. And I'm like, this is the best. The timing worked out so perfectly that I was able to get into it. And then all of a sudden I did the marketing, I spent thousands of dollars. And then I look back and only one person called back, and they were just asking me if I wanted to advertise in their newspaper. And I was like, oh gosh, this is terrible. And I think for so many of us, we just set ourselves up. And what we need to really understand, what we need to do is like, what is it that we want? How is it that we can get ourselves to move forward and take that action? And I think that could be something that could shift so much within ourselves. So ask yourself, what is it that I want? What is it that I want to be doing? And I think if we do that, then all of a sudden we have this idea that we know we can start to get to the places that we want to really get to. Okay, I think another mindset that a lot of people focus on, or don't focus on, I should say, is the optimist versus the pessimist. And this is a big one. And it seems obvious, but there's a few ideas that for me really started to shift so much. You see, number one is to recognize that when, people say, like, what's the classic example of an optimist versus a pessimist? So an optimist sees the glass half full and the pessimist sees it half empty. And that's great. However, we also have to be realistic, right? Just because something is half full does not also mean that it's not half empty. It is also half empty. But what we have to recognize is that we have to focus on the half full part. And I think for a lot of people, they don't necessarily think about it like that. They don't understand, hey, you know what? Although this thing is not, we're going to focus on the good, it also has its, concern. We have our concerns. And what we have to do is we have to be prepared for those concerns. We have to understand to ourselves, hey, you know what? I want to be able to do something different. And if we do that, then all of a sudden, I think things are going to be very, very different. So understanding that, I think, is a big shift when it comes to the stuff that we want to be doing. So if we can start to recognize, hey, there are certain things in our lives and we have the opportunity to point it as good or bad. I remember literally today, somebody reached out to me. It's like, Ben, I got bad news. I'm like, whoa, before you tell me this quote unquote bad news, it's just news. Like, we define whether the thing is bad or not. But like, honestly, it's just news. What's going on? He's like, well, the electricity in one of the houses that you're working on is broken. We're going to have to replace the panel. I'm like, okay, so that's news. We'll have to get it fixed. Like, what else are we going to do? I can get upset and get it fixed, or I could just let it go and get it fixed. Like, literally the same thing's going to have to happen. I could be upset and frustrated, but that doesn't help at all. Right. So understanding that, I think, is very important for us to be able to say, hey, if I want to be able to shift something, if I want to be able to have a different perspective on it, I have the choice to think a certain way. I have the choice to do something a certain way. And it's all on us. We all have that ability. And I think if we can start to understand that, then I really believe we can start to move forward in so many different areas. Okay. So I think that's another big one also. When it comes to, though, one of the bigger ones, I would say and this is more in the financial sense, is the abundant versus the scarce mindset. And when it comes to abundancy versus scarce, I really haven't heard about this until I was like into the personal development world, until I was like in this entrepreneurial world. It's the idea that there is more out there than we think there is. Like, we as humans only see as much as we know. Like, if you can actually think about all the people in the world, it's a tremendous amount of people. Like, think about it. Like, when you go out to, like, I don't know, you like fly out to a different state and you just go to a carnival and you see like hundreds of people. You're like, who are these people? I've never seen them in my life, and they're living on the same planet as I am. Right. So that's just like one little town that you're going to, like, a carnival in. Like, there's literally billions of people. Like, we can't even comprehend the amount of people that there are. And what we have to recognize is that we have this ability to start to say, hey, you know what? I only think that there's this many people, so therefore I'm only going to be living like that. And it's like one of those things that happens a lot with finances. It's like we don't realize how much money is circulating and how much there is out there. So we hold ourselves back, like we can't do X, Y, and Z. And if we can start to have this abundant mindset, say, no, you know what, there's actually a lot more out there. We have the ability to be doing a lot more. That could be something that could shift so much within ourselves, because then we can actually do a little bit, because we realize we only need 0.000000001 of the pie to be extremely, extremely comfortable with our lives. And if we can understand that, then it gives us just hope that, hey, you know what, there's so much possibility out there. There's so much opportunity out there. And that is such a big shift that I think for so many people, they don't really realize. And if we can start to do that, I think so many things will happen. So many things will change within our own personal lives. So understanding that, I think, is massive when it comes to the success that we want as well. So when it comes to, I think a lot of people, when it comes to the opposite of abundance, I think it's the scarce mindset. It's seeing that there's not enough, and you need to hoard, and you need to keep it, and you need to like really hold everything, because there's not going to be enough. And I think that's something that is so unfortunate, because for so many people, they struggle. So many people, they don't even believe that there is enough out there that they can even get. It's not even like, oh, there's a lot, but I can't get it. It's like, there's not even a lot out there. And it's so unfortunate, because there is so much out there. There is so much, not just financially, there's so much love out there. There's so much kindness out there. It's, what are you focusing on? There's so much negativity going on in the news, but there's also a lot of positive stuff going on. Maybe not in the news, but like around. And what we have to do is we have to focus on that. And that is something that could shift so much within ourselves. So really working on our mindset is really such a tremendous, tremendous work, but it's literally everything, because you could have two people who are going through the same exact experience and treat them totally opposite. And what we have to do is, like, we have to ask ourselves, like, what's the way that we want to be living our lives? How is it that we want to be doing it? What is it that I can do differently to allow myself to see success in different areas? And if we do that, then I think we could start to shift so many different things in our lives. And I think for most of us, we want to have a different life. We want to be able to step it up a little bit. We don't want to get frustrated about every little thing. We don't want to get stressed and anxious when it comes to all these small tasks that are going on. So we need to ask ourselves, like, what are we going to do about it? And really working on our mindset is one of those things that we can do about it. I highly recommend it. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about this topic. I'm very passionate about it, and it can have a tremendous, tremendous effect on not just your life, but also the life of the people around you. Have a great night or day or afternoon. See you on the next one.